The world you were born into is not the world you were told about. You're raised on lullabies of kindness, tales of justice, and promises of fairness. They tell you, be good, work hard, love people, and life will love you back. But slowly, painfully, the veil lifts. You learn that love is conditional, that honesty makes people uncomfortable, that being real makes you a target. The first cut is confusion, when your light is mistaken for arrogance, when your truth gets labeled too much. You start shrinking to make others comfortable. You try to be less so they don't feel threatened, but the soul doesn't forget who it is. You smile, but something feels off. You laugh, but something inside stays quiet. You agree to things you don't believe in, just to keep the peace. And peace becomes a performance, until one day, you wake up. Not the kind of waking where your eyes open, but the kind where your spirit snaps out of its coma. You look around and realize everyone's playing roles. Everyone's wearing masks. Everyone's surviving, not living. The truth hits you in waves. The friend who only called when they needed something. The family who supported the version of you they could control. The system that said you were free, while feeding you chains dressed as choices. And you realize the world doesn't want your truth. It wants your obedience. It starts slow. Opportunities fall through. People ghost you. You're misunderstood in rooms you used to belong to. But that's not failure. That's shedding. You're not being punished. You're being refined. The people who walk away, they're being removed. The opportunities that vanish, they weren't aligned. The silence, it's sacred. You start hearing your own voice again, beneath the noise, beneath the conditioning. You stop begging for spaces that drain you. You stop explaining your worth. You stop trying to prove your spirit to people who only speak ego, and that is the real beginning. Every soul has a mirror moment, when you sit with no applause, no affirmations, no validation, just you and the truth. You ask, who am I? Without the titles, without the likes, without the followers, the praise, the crowd. And for the first time, you see it. Your power was never in your image. It was in your essence. You are not what happened to you. You are what rose from it. Every betrayal carved depth into your heart. Every rejection taught you boundaries. Every silence birthed a stronger voice. You've been through hell, and you didn't lose your soul. You've cried and kept building. You've been overlooked and kept showing up. You've been broken and still chose to heal. That's not weakness, that's legacy. Once you awaken, the real tests begin. You'll be tempted to go back to your old self, the agreeable self, the shrinking self, the version of you that said yes when your spirit screamed no. But that version is gone. And what stands now is flame. People will say you've changed. Good. You were meant to. They'll say you're difficult. That's what it sounds like when you stop being easy to manipulate. They'll say you're full of yourself. Damn right. You're finally whole. But the fire isn't about destruction. It's about purification. Everything that wasn't real burns away. The fake friends, the false humility, the toxic cycles disguised as loyalty. And what's left? You, the one you buried to be accepted, the one you silenced to avoid judgment, the one you watered down to be loved. You've been reborn. Not as someone new, but as who you were before the world told you who to be. Here's what they don't tell you about walking in truth. It's lonely. Not because you're alone, but because real ones are rare. You'll go through seasons of silence, not because you're not loved, but because you're being protected. You'll lose people you thought would never leave. But some attachments are actually cages. And as you rise, so will the resistance. Because your authenticity disrupts their comfort. Your light exposes their shadows. Your growth reminds them of their stagnation. But keep going, because alignment is greater than acceptance. Purpose is greater than popularity. Peace is greater than performance. You weren't born to blend in. You were born to break chains, to shift atmospheres, to build thrones from brokenness, to speak life into the forgotten, to rise where others crumble. And that's exactly what you're doing. At first, the silence feels like abandonment. No texts, no calls, no one checking on you. But then, something shifts. You realize you're not alone. You're in alignment. You're not lost. You're being led. The room didn't go quiet to break you. It went quiet to build you. Because when it's too loud, you can't hear God. When it's too crowded, you can't feel your own energy. And when everyone's watching, you stop seeing yourself. So you retreat. Not to disappear, but to remember. And in that stillness, you recover your vision, your boundaries, your voice, your power. This isn't exile, it's elevation. You're not being isolated, you're being initiated. You start feeling something deeper now. A pull in your bones, a whisper in your dreams, a fire in your chest that says you were sent. Because you weren't just born, you were summoned. Summoned by generations that couldn't finish their prayers. Summoned by ancestors who planted seeds they never got to see bloom. Summoned by bloodline spirits who looked into the future and said, "This one will break the curse." You're here to finish what they started, to water what they planted, to become the harvest they never touched. And every step you take forward, they rise with you. This is why you've always felt different. Why small talk drains you. Why fake spaces suffocate you. Why your joy never came from fitting in, but from standing out. You weren't made for mimicry. You were made for mastery. This is soul work. This is system breaking. This is spiritual warfare, and you came fully equipped. They told you masculinity was domination, control, status, aggression. But that was never the truth. True divine masculinity is discipline, stability, clarity, protection of energy, alignment with purpose. It's the quiet strength that doesn't flex but fortifies. The inner calm that doesn't need to shout but shakes rooms. It's the leader that leads not by fear but by example. You don't need chains or thrones to prove who you are. You carry royalty in your presence, in your decisions, in your discernment. And now, you move like it. You're not reactive, you're rooted. You're not chasing, you're chosen. You're not loud, you're undeniable. This is power, this is manhood. This is the king within, fully remembered. They say you've switched up. But what really happened is, your soul came online. You stopped ignoring the alarms in your spirit. You stopped playing small to keep small people comfortable. You stopped shrinking for love that was never love to begin with. And they felt it. Oh, they felt it. Because when you finally reclaim your energy, it shakes the room. Not because you yell, but because your silence now has weight. You don't chase arguments. You don't explain boundaries. You just walk in them. You move like you know what you carry. You don't need to raise your voice when your presence speaks volumes. You don't need to defend your name in rooms you've outgrown. You don't need to dim your vision for people scared to open their eyes. You've seen what the world really is. Not the filtered version, not the one posted for likes. The raw, manipulative, survival-based reality that feeds off illusion. And instead of becoming part of it, you became the disruption. You didn't play the game, you walked off the board and built your own table. That's why they don't understand you. That's why they talk behind your back. That's why they copy you, but never credit you. Because they can imitate your moves, but they can't duplicate your frequency. You didn't become this version overnight. It took solitude. It took breaking. It took nights where your own mind felt like the enemy. You've screamed in silence. You've lost people who swore they'd never leave. You've cried in cars, in showers, on floors, with no one around. But still, you rose. because there was something in you too stubborn to die, something royal, something ancient, something undeniable. And now you carry yourself differently, not out of ego, but out of embodiment. Because when you've seen darkness and refused to become it, you move with a different level of grace. You don't perform anymore. You don't impress. You don't fake smile your way through the crowd. You walk into every room knowing, I don't need your validation. I am the value. They used to ignore you, now they study you. They used to mock you, now they mimic you. They used to doubt you, now they ask you for guidance. But you don't let it distract you. Because this was never about being seen. This was about being sent. Sent to remind others of who they are. Sent to break chains without asking for permission. Sent to carry a vibration that couldn't be silenced. And now that you've remembered, there's no going back. You protect your energy like a fortress. You guard your peace like sacred ground. You only speak when there's purpose behind your words. Because everything you do now is with intention. You don't move out of fear. You move from vision. You don't react. You respond with divine clarity. This is not self-help. This is spiritual strategy. You are no longer a man trying to survive the system. You are a king creating new systems. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You already chose yourself. You're not asking for respect anymore. You embody it. You're not chasing a legacy. You are the legacy. Because the moment you stop performing, you stepped into sovereignty. And with sovereignty comes silence. Not the empty kind, the powerful kind. The kind of silence that holds presence, that commands energy, that shakes unrooted foundations just by showing up. That's why they can't box you in. You're too fluid, too grounded, too guided. They don't know what to call you anymore because you don't fit their narrative. You're the one who slipped through the cracks and built his own temple. The one who took pain and turned it into prophecy. The one who turned isolation into initiation. And now, when you walk, you carry nations with you. Your voice carries legacy. Your presence breaks generational agreements. Your decisions echo through dimensions. Because you're not just living for you anymore. You're living for every soul that never got the chance. Every ancestor who was silenced. Every child watching in silence, wondering if it's safe to rise. And you show them it is. You don't need applause. You don't need confirmation. You don't need the spotlight. You're not in this to be famous. You're in this to be faithful. Faithful to your calling, faithful to your growth, faithful to the version of you that refused to give up, when giving up would have been easier. You wake up different now, not heavy with fear, but grounded in knowing. You've seen too much, felt too much, survived too much, to ever go back to pretending. You're not perfect, but you're real. And in a world full of noise, real is rare. So keep walking, keep building, keep rising, even if they don't clap, even if they don't understand, even if they walk away. Your legacy doesn't need an audience, it just needs you to keep moving forward. Faceless, fearless, focused. You didn't just level up, you woke up, and now you lead from within. This is consciousness in motion.